Hello everyone, welcome back to Wild Wild Wes's Gelvin Valley for Farming Simulator 15. We are harvesting canola and we're in the lower left hand corner of the map, way down in the southwest, and we're kind of up on a huge hill. You can hear the wind whipping around in this beautiful map for Farming Simulator 15, the Wild Wild Wes created. You know, here the other day, I think I mentioned it had been 3 years since I started doing videos and exercising my voice, and this was one of the first, this map rather, was where I did my first video, first without sound and then adding voice kind of with the next one. So that tells me we've been here a long time, 3 years, and I still enjoy it. I can't help it. It's just a good map. What can I say? But last time I got all tangled up talking about some app and modding fixes, you know, that are to come on this map. Related to the edge of the field. I think it was fresh on my mind because we had a dickens of a time getting the combine to go kind of around the outer edge. Speaking of combine, I just as well get the pipe out and get all ready. I'm going to have to pay attention here to try to, it's got to be getting close. There we go. I just want to keep from... You know, I probably have to empty my truck. So, yeah, well, maybe it won't fill it all the way up. And since I'm enjoying having another mod in here, well, we had the mod. I just activated the part, you know, where it would run over the crop. I don't know that I'll want to have it activated if I eventually return to the little harvester, but we'll see. I don't remember how much this holds. Is it 59? Maybe I can park it. What do I know? Oops. I'm gonna cycle through. You know, I guess it doesn't show my truck up there. I can switch it over to it. Yeah, I'm still a little off full, so. Alright, we can do more combining. Always forget to take the brake off. But the brake is practically a necessity on these steep hills. Anyway, I wanted to return to a topic I wanted to visit about, and it kind of was triggered by a video my friend Russell put together, where I think he talked about games played in a car, you know, kind of when you're on a family road trip or whatever, and, you know, I'm sure we've all heard the stereotypical whine of kids, you know, are we there yet? You know, and just the incessant questions when, you know, you gotta sit in a car for a few hours, and it's, everybody knows it's uncomfortable. The only difference between the adults and the kids is that the kids, you know, don't have a filter yet, so they whine and complain, and I'm sure the adults would like to, but they have enough maturity to know that that doesn't solve anything. So, road games. Oh, I hear my dog barking. Who knows what it's getting upset at? Road games, presumably, are invented by harried parents who get tired of hearing their kids whine and, I don't know, maybe invent something to help take their mind off, the miles that go by. And I mean, it's I suppose it's different for families. I never went on many road trips growing up, and to me a road trip, here in the US would constitute something where you're in the car multiple hours. If it's just a single hour and you're getting from point A to point B, I mean, shoot, some commutes are about that long, so I consider a road trip, a major destination point, maybe for a vacation, and everybody's in the car boiling in their own juice for, an extended period of time. And even as I say that, I don't know how common road trips are. I mean, I know they are here in the U.S. Maybe the nature of the country that we have, the size of it, and the American love for the automobile, where versus other nations, I don't know, what the customs would be there, but probably most people have been on something like that. And now that I'm an adult, I've been on several over my lifetime, both with my family growing up and now with my own little family, with my wife and I. And it's, especially when you're driving, even though you're just sitting there on your can, driving can be exhausting. I don't know how the truckers do it day after day, even though you're just sitting there holding a steering wheel. It's something, it's an activity that demands your full attention, or if it doesn't, it should. Come on, get up the hill. It's amazing how much it backtracks when you just reverse a teeny little bit. There, get around this pesky tree. I probably should take this tree out. Not very often I come in cab. I still prefer to be outside just so I can see the map. So, I wanted to kind of share some of the games that we played, and one of them, Russell already hinted at, and what's it called? We called it Slug Bug, and it's just the dumbest game. Virtually has no point at all. I forget what he called it, and nor can I explain why it's a particular car, make and model, if you will, that is the trigger point. I don't understand that. And I don't think Mom and Dad delivered this one to us, by the way, but Slug Bug. So if you see one of those VW Beetles, especially the old school style, on the road, it was called a Slug Bug. And when you saw one, you yelled it out, Slug Bug. And of course, your job was to punch in the shoulder whoever was nearest to you. I have no idea why. And of course, after being the recipient of a punch, you for darn sure were looking for the next VW so you could, get some retribution. And the only alteration that I recall was if you saw a VW bus, you had a double Slug Bug, so you could get in 2 punches on your neighbor, namely a brother or some other relative. If it was your father or mother, wouldn't advise punching them, because they could punch back a lot harder than we could. But just talk about a dumb game. And, probably if anything, this would be one that parents would crack down on and advise against, because inevitably somebody would get punched too hard and they would start crying and bellyache to mom, and how that goes, and then everything would have to stop. But maybe for a while it keeps someone's attention out the window and looking at things instead of whining, about how much time this was taking up. Maybe someday someone will invent those things, that were in Star Trek. I don't know what they were called. Teleporters? where you stand on it and you disappear in a bunch of atoms and reappear somewhere else. Part of me says, if they do, I'm not going to go first in seeing if they work, that's for sure. Anyway, so just to say, we did the same thing. It sounds like a variation of it was also in New Zealand. That's just kind of interesting. I would have had no clue as a kid we were playing an international game. A lot of times growing up, and there's no way I could do this now. Whoop, pay attention, pay attention. Back in the day, I didn't get carsick very easy. So I could read, and oftentimes, to pass the hours, and to put this in perspective, I live in Oregon, West Coast, and I had cousins who lived in the state of Illinois and Ohio. So I know we took road trips to both of those places, and it's, especially to Ohio, it's well over 2,000 miles. So we're talking a couple days of travel, 3 days at least. I think it's even 3, getting into Illinois from where we are. So 3 days of solid driving. So you had to find something, with which to entertain yourself. Let me see, did I turn my combine off? Nope, let's preserve fuel. Alright, take the brake off, and here we go. This time we'll try to put the cover over as we head on down. We're about as far away from our storage place as we could get, I presume. Not sure what the fastest way to get there is either. Hum. Oh yeah, it's over there. Probably gotta go out the hang a right and on down the road. Head on out the lane. I'm not used to having such a large truck navigating these narrow aisleways. So that was probably a parent unapproved game, but yeah, I was starting to say I would read books, comic books. I just didn't have a problem getting carsick in those days. I don't know what the difference was. Now I get on a plane and my kids laugh at me, and I get sick in a plane sometimes, particularly coming into the Las Vegas airport. I really don't like that place, the way it whips around a plane. So I know I couldn't read in a car again. Obviously not when you're driving, and most of the time I'm driving, so it wouldn't be an option anyhow. But I sure could do it back in the day. And somewhere in there back in the day, to amuse us, books on tape became a thing. I'm not sure when those, were invented. I say tape, every car used to have a tape deck. Now I think you can't even hardly find a car that has a CD drive. Sorry, Ted. That'll get the papers. So, but you still have that same option available. We don't have a tape deck. I think we do have a CD drive. An MP3 file or whatever on your phone. There's tons of options, and those are really helpful. I know at our office, somewhere down the line, we bought a bunch of CDs, or maybe they're DVDs. I really don't know. Oh, that brake caused damage. I'm not even sure who puts them out. It's like a teaching series where they pick top professors around the U.S. I don't know how they pick them, probably based on rankings by the students as to how good a job they do on lectures. And maybe it's an American Teaching Company? I just forget. And And then you have like a series of lectures you can listen to, and it's pretty cool. Here you're driving down the road and you keep popping those CDs, DVDs, whatever, and you can learn something. And obviously, they got them on all sorts of topics. Some of them, I think, even are video. And obviously, we can't really do the video ones when you're driving, unless, you're a passenger and you can watch. But for the driver to get anything out of it, it needs to be just spoken. So there's a lot of history ones, that I know I've listened to. And the drive, we have a daughter now that lives in the middle of the country, and going to see her is basically a 2.5 hour drive. They're in the state of Missouri. And even at 2.5 days, you figure if you have decent days, maybe 10 hours on the road, so you're looking maybe 25 hours total. I don't know if that's about the right number. And so each CD is about like a half an hour of material. So you look at that and say, well, in theory, 25 hours with half-hour CDs, you could go through 50 of them. Well, some of these classes are so huge. One of them, I think the American history one that we have is, it's just shy, I think, of 100 DVDs. So, of course, when you go to, you have the trip from. So in theory, even that, I guess you could get through most of them. The trouble is nobody has that kind of energy to just keep popping them right and left. Maybe you want some variety in the air, want to listen to some music. But I know for me, it's very helpful. Plus, you end up learning something in the process. And there's so many topics you could have in there. It's just very handy. But I know back in the day, before those were available, the books on tape I know we had as a family, somewhere in there, I invested in a lot of books on tape, particularly Westerns, and specifically, not just him, but a lot of novels by Western author Louis L'Amour. I read a lot of his books, as a kid, and a lot of them were, professional readers took them on. Let me set the brake, go to the combine. Oh, I guess I could empty it here. Screw it. Let me just get this show back on the road. And readers are interesting. I have another series on here where I'm reading a book. And, of course, for YouTube, the books that you have to read, to avoid breaching copyrights or whatever, you got to read ones where the copyrights have expired. And copyrights for written works are long. But obviously the ones you would get on tape, they have figured all that out. They've paid whatever royalties need to be paid and so forth. But the reader is huge. Some of them are just awesome, and others are kind of, I don't like the sound of your voice. And even I say that even knowing full well I have a terrible voice. That's part of the reason I have a YouTube channel, is to exercise it at the very least, what little I have. But some readers are just awesome. And another group of books on tape that I know we just loved, it was by a humorist writer called Patrick McManus. I think that was his real name. He was an outdoor writer, an outdoorsman, if you will, so interested in fishing, hunting, and all associated sports. And just his life, he kind of had a tough upbringing. I don't know if he was on the cusp of the Depression or, if he lived through that time era. So some of it is just a different era, than most of us have lived. So some of it is fascination with that, but just funny as all get out, and it can really make the miles go by quicker when you have something like that to listen to. So that was definitely something I remember. I still have all those tapes. I've digitized them since, converted them. It was such a painful amount of work, but using a record player, piping it into the computer, turning it into MP3 files, eventually got the job done. But it's nice to have that for the road. And for him, it was just I think it was George S. Irving. It was the reader. I think he since has passed away. But he just did an awesome job. I don't think I could listen to those books, being read by anybody else other than him. Matter of fact, one of the tape jackets for one of the works said, "If the real Patrick McManus doesn't sound like this, he should shut up and keep writing." I mean, whatever, right? But it makes a huge difference, when you have a good reader who's able to come up with different voices for the various characters and just the energy, intensity in which they read it. This didn't have any sound effects or anything like that, but just an outstanding job. And it isn't just different voices. It's really an interpretation of an author's work. When you read it, as to the voice inflections you have or that you put to it. And I would highly recommend them if anybody ever needs some good listening material for the road. Patrick McManus, that's some pretty good listening. But I really enjoy the Louis L'Amour too. And those were different readers, and a lot of times it's, they didn't put much into it, I would say. I'm sure there was effort, made, but it just was kind of a straight read, if that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. But some of them weren't a read, and these were really, you paid a little extra for these, but sometimes these tapes, would have sound effects and a whole cast of actors. And it almost was like a movie, where there was different voices, different people, literally, for every single character. And yeah, it was some fascinating listening, and this is a Western, so there's always, gonna be gunplay in a Western. And, so then to hear the gun, the crack of the gun and the whiz of the bullet, you'd hear all these things. And I mean, I'm not saying it made you duck in the car, but it just added to the experience, Like I say, the only thing it was missing was the visual. And back in those days, we didn't have that for the car. Now we do. It seems like, I know the vehicle that we have kind of has this flip-down screen where you can play DVDs. I know the last major family trip that we took, I think we were headed to Yellowstone National Park, and so there was a DVD we had on bison or something, and the kids watched that thing over and over, and I gotta say, I have personally never seen it, but I've listened to it probably 50 times, and then the only reason I haven't seen it is because I was driving, so I couldn't see the screen, which is a good thing. I don't think it's a good idea to have a screen to look at, when you're driving. So, in many ways, I guess traveling's gotten easier in more recent years with these additional tools, or whatever you want to call them. So, but in terms of games now, some of these, we would just make up as kids, and maybe they aren't really games, it's more activities to distract yourself from the boredom of driving and whatever. And I know, I think I've mentioned before, how we don't have air conditioning in our home. Well, years ago, there were a lot of cars that didn't have air conditioning either. And for a while, I know in my family, we didn't have air conditioning in the car. So it was hot, it was nasty. I suppose there's a reason kids, nag and whine and whatever kids do. So it really, and in those days, I don't know if the laws were different or if people just got away with more things than they did now in terms of seatbelt laws. Now, I mean, people are very fastidious about that, and rightfully so. I mean, I don't want my kids to be harmed, so of course we wanted to have them in a seatbelt. But in those days, I mean, I remember spending a lot of time just in the back bed of my father's truck. He would put a canopy over it, and he put this sheet of plywood kind of over the top, the sides of the truck, but under the canopy. So we would be elevated, if you will, above the bed of the truck. We were laying on the sheet of plywood, and we were right next to the window, that looked into the cab of the truck. And, I look back on that, no seat belts at all. And if Dad would have gotten a wreck, oh my goodness, we would have been thrown out the windows of the canopy, I'm sure, or rammed into the cab, because the back window of the cab was there. But I think he and Mom, that was their way of being able to travel in peace and not have to hear us ask them every 5 minutes, are we there yet? Of course, we would sometimes beat on the window and try to talk to him through it, but it was hard to hear. I don't think it always opened. So there was things, I know, a lot of horsing around we could do back there. Come on, Combine, you got this hill. You can do it. We're mowing the place right on down, I must say. But sometimes, I have just kind of like I am fond of maps. That's my favorite mod in Farming Sim. I enjoy real life maps too. I mean, here the other day I had a whole episode in here about a train route, that I was studying on a map. And I mean, I can just get lost in maps for, hours at a time. I love Google Maps and whatnot, and like I say, I got to be careful because once I turn the silly thing on, I'll just hours will disappear. But so in those days, all we had was paper maps, and so to go cross country, we generally had, I don't know what company made them, but a decent set of maps. The main roads, if you will, that went interstate. The interstate and state highways of basically the entire U.S. And so one of the things I would do to amuse myself was just study the map. And, you could see kind of where you were, you knew what town you were just in, and they would have this helpful calculation, X number of miles, until you hit the next town. And, that seemed to kind of break the travel up a little bit. It helped you take it in smaller doses and, where it didn't seem as far. So if you went through town A and town B was just 10 miles up the road, well, that wasn't so far. 10 miles goes pretty quick. And so you would look at a few things and you'd see the signs about the town getting closer. And then, boom, pretty soon you were there. Well, then I'd look at the map again. What's the next one? I know that probably sounds totally ridiculous, but hey, you do what you gotta do when you're bored. And speaking of boredom, I've probably bored everybody long enough. The bell just rang on our 30 minutes, and I realize I haven't even got to the bottom of all the activities we would do in a car. Maybe nobody cares. I'd be curious What have you or your family done in the car? What kinds of, I know I listened to Russell's video. I'll maybe try to link it below with the slug bug, and I think he may have mentioned some other things. I don't remember at the moment. But what do you do? What do you do to pass the time, to help it go, and even to be productive? Like I say, sometimes it's really good to listen to wholesome material as you go and learn a few things, and of course, even with all of this, the biggest one I haven't even said at all is just flat out family conversation. You can have a lot of talking with one another while you're on the road. So anyway, I think that'll be all for now. Thank you all for coming, and I will see you on the next one. I don't know why I raised my header right there. That's because I'm an idiot. Anyway, thank you all. We'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.